For nearly a century, think about it, Hollywood decided exactly what the world watched, when they watched it, and exactly how they watched it. They held this absolute, seemingly unbreakable monopoly on global entertainment. But today, well, today, a single tech company actually spends more on entertainment than many of those legacy movie studios combined. And the beautiful irony of this whole disruption is that this company wasn't born on some glamorous studio lot in Los Angeles with billion-dollar backing. No, it started by mailing DVDs in simple little red envelopes. Welcome to our explainer. Today, we're unpacking a massive story of media disruption, technological revolution, and ultimately, the future of storytelling itself.
Okay, let's dive into this. To truly understand how an industry that seemed completely undisruptible actually fell, we really need to look at this as a classic David versus Goliath narrative. We're asking how a scrappy mail-order startup managed to completely outmaneuver a century-old empire. What were the specific economic and technological levers they pulled to capture the entire globe's attention? What did Hollywood actually gain when it was forced to modernize? And perhaps more importantly, what did it permanently lose in the process?
You have to appreciate the stark contrast here. On one side of the ring, you had the absolute titans of traditional media. We're talking massive movie theaters with exclusive release windows, deeply entrenched television networks, incredibly lucrative cable TV bundles, and brick-and-mortar rental empires like Blockbuster. And on the other side, just those iconic red envelopes. It looks like a completely mismatched fight, right? I mean, the legacy companies had all the money, all the major stars, and massive physical infrastructure. To rent a movie back then, you had to physically drive to a store, cross your fingers hoping the tape was actually in stock, and then deal with the absolute anxiety of returning a VHS tape unrewound. Netflix didn't have any of that infrastructure, but they realized they had something else entirely, a radically better user experience.
Now, the crucial point here is understanding exactly why the studios absolutely loved this old model. It was entirely built on artificial scarcity and strictly controlled distribution monopolies. For decades, the entire industry relied on physical media. You had to go to the theater at a specific time. You had to tune in to a network broadcast right as it aired. Or you just had to hope your local video store hadn't rented out the last copy of a new release. The studios dictated all of these terms simply because they controlled the literal, physical distribution pipelines. This meant the industry stayed highly predictable, highly profitable, and largely unchallenged for a very long time. The consumer? Well, you just had to accept the friction.
Enter Reed Hastings and Mark Randolph, the founders of a startup that nobody initially took seriously. Back in the year 2000, Netflix was actually losing money, so they went ahead and proposed a buyout to the undisputed king of home video, Blockbuster. They asked for $50 million, and Blockbuster's executives literally laughed them out of the room. No way, right? They saw Netflix as this tiny niche business that posed absolutely zero threat to their thousands of retail stores. But Blockbuster failed to realize that their own massive profit relied heavily on punishing their customers with exorbitant late fees. Netflix recognized that penalizing your user base was a fatal flaw in the long-term user experience. That one realization completely transformed that failed acquisition meeting into one of the most legendary business mistakes in modern economic history.
So, Netflix went its own way, and their early DVD strategy was quietly laying the groundwork for an absolute empire. First, they introduced a flat-fee subscription model, which completely eliminated those hated late fees. Second, the incredibly convenient DVD-by-mail system removed the friction of actually going to the video store. But the third step? That is the true genius of their entire operation, the recommendation algorithm. Long before they ever streamed a single video, Netflix was gathering millions and millions of data points on consumer viewing habits. Every single time a user rated a DVD, they were training an algorithm. Netflix was learning exactly how to cross-reference genres, build incredibly specific taste profiles, and literally map the DNA of global audiences. And, as you'll see, this data would eventually dictate billions of dollars in production.
But this is where the story becomes really interesting. In the late 2000s, we hit this perfect storm of technological convergence. We saw a rapid acceleration of tech advancements all at once. Broadband internet suddenly became incredibly fast and widely available to the average home. Streaming technology stabilized, which finally eliminated that dreaded buffering screen we all hated. But crucially, cloud infrastructure emerged, meaning companies could deliver heavy video files across the globe almost instantly. And interestingly enough, Netflix managed this massive scaling by hosting their entire streaming infrastructure on Amazon Web Services. They were ironically paying a future massive streaming rival to help them disrupt the traditional entertainment industry. Netflix timed this technological leap perfectly, and in doing so, they gave birth to the global phenomenon of binge watching. For a few years, Netflix happily licensed older shows and movies from traditional studios. It was a win-win. But they knew the studios would eventually wake up to the threat and pull their content back, so they asked a really bold question. What happens when a tech company uses its massive vault of viewer data to actually make creative decisions? The answer to that was targeted original content.
When they greenlit House of Cards, they didn't just rely on executive intuition or gut feeling. They looked at their data. They knew their audience loved director David Fincher, they knew they loved Kevin Spacey, and they knew the original British version of the show was already a hit on their platform. By combining those three specific data points, they successfully mitigated the creative risk that traditional studios usually just have to guess on.
Well, this triggered absolute existential panic in traditional media. Cord-cutting accelerated, incredibly lucrative cable TV revenues plummeted, and DVD sales basically fell off a cliff. Hollywood was suddenly burning the boats to chase Netflix. This sparked what we now call the streaming wars. Literally overnight, every legacy studio had to reinvent itself as a tech company just to survive. We saw the launch of Disney+, Max, Peacock, and Paramount+, right alongside massive tech giants entering the space like Prime Video and Apple TV+. But notice the impact on us, the consumers. Instead of one convenient cable bundle, audiences are now forced to manage and pay for half a dozen different subscriptions just to watch their favorite shows. The traditional movie release windows were completely shattered in this chaotic scramble for market share.
And we can't ignore the massive shift toward international audiences. Think about it. Traditional Hollywood historically exported American stories to the rest of the world. Netflix completely flipped that model upside down. They started investing heavily in local productions everywhere. By perfecting sophisticated dubbing and subtitle technology, they ensured a localized show could feel completely native to viewers in 190 different countries instantly. A show from South Korea like Squid Game, or a series from Spain like Money Heist, could suddenly become the biggest television event on the planet overnight. They proved that with a global streaming strategy, geographic and language barriers were simply no longer a hurdle to massive cultural dominance.
And this brilliantly illustrates the financial reality of this new world. $17 billion. That is what Netflix's annual content spend looks like at its peak. To put that into perspective for you, that single number is actually larger than the gross domestic product of several small nations, and it absolutely dwarfs what a legacy studio might spend on their yearly theatrical slate. This astronomical budget forced the entire entertainment industry into an incredibly expensive arms race. It proved a stark new reality. To compete in the modern entertainment landscape, you need incredibly deep pockets and a relentless non-stop output of new material just to keep your subscribers from hitting that cancel button.
The disruption is undeniable when you look at the raw numbers. It tells a story of a massive, completely unprecedented transfer of consumer attention and wealth. While traditional networks are fighting tooth and nail over a continuously shrinking pie of aging cable subscribers, the streaming ecosystem has grown to encompass billions of hours of viewing time per week. Traditional television is essentially fighting gravity at this point, while streaming platforms have captured the default attention of an entire generation.
But, as we know, explosive growth rarely comes without collateral damage. As the dust settles on the initial streaming boom, the industry is waking up to a harsh new reality. So, what does this all mean? We have to ask, what are the hidden costs of fundamentally restructuring a global industry in less than a decade? Because tearing down a century-old economic model and replacing it with venture capital-fueled streaming platforms creates deep, systemic vulnerabilities, and these vulnerabilities are only just now coming to light.
Let's step back and impartially examine these hidden problems. To fund these streaming wars, media companies took on massive amounts of corporate debt. As subscriber growth inevitably slowed down, these platforms began cracking down on password sharing and steadily raising those monthly prices. Furthermore, the streaming model fundamentally broke the traditional residual system, the back-end pay that had kept working actors and writers afloat for decades. This loss of compensation sparked historic, industry-crippling writer and actor strikes, as creatives fought for fair pay in the new digital era while simultaneously staring down the looming threat of artificial intelligence. Meanwhile, traditional cinema attendance continues to face steep declines because audiences have been strictly conditioned to just wait a few weeks for the streaming release.
You know that feeling when you sit on your couch, completely paralyzed, spending 30 minutes just scrolling trying to find something to watch? That is the very real human experience of content overload. We're left with a really complex balance here. On one hand, the consumer benefits are genuinely incredible. You have unprecedented global access, ultimate convenience, and exposure to diverse international stories. But the industry costs are undeniably heavy. Critics argue that when algorithms and completion rates dictate what gets made, art naturally suffers, prioritizing pure engagement metrics over genuine human storytelling. The convenience of streaming comes at the direct cost of the shared cultural experience of the movie theater, fundamentally altering our historical relationship with cinema.
So as we look toward 2030 and beyond, a fascinating new question emerges. Will Netflix eventually be disrupted the exact same way they disrupted Blockbuster? The cycle of technological replacement never stops, right?
We're already seeing the rise of interactive media and highly personalized entertainment. By 2040, virtual and mixed reality could completely redefine the concept of a screen entirely. And by 2050, we face the prospect of fully AI-generated entertainment, which loops perfectly back to the data-driven start of Netflix. What actually happens when an AI knows your exact viewing habits and just generates a custom show specifically for you, right on the fly?
Ultimately, Netflix didn't literally destroy Hollywood, it forced Hollywood to painfully and rapidly evolve. Some legacy companies adapted, while others simply faded away. And it brings us to this profound thought. Every single generation has a technology that completely rewrites the rules. For newspapers, it was the internet. For music, it was digital downloads. For Hollywood, it was streaming. Netflix didn't just change how we watch stories, it fundamentally changed who gets to tell them and who gets to see them.
It's a truly fascinating look at how technology, behavioral economics, and just sheer ambition can rewrite the rules of a century-old game. The real question now is, as Netflix becomes the new entrenched legacy giant, who is waiting in a garage right now building the technology that's going to disrupt them? The world is changing, and now you understand why. Keep asking questions, keep learning, and I'll see you in the next explainer.
Thanks for watching World Decoded. Make sure to like and share, subscribe, and stay curious.